Hey everybody, this is the orientation intro to the week 4 material, fall 2023. Still hot out there. Should cool off at some point, I guess. Anyway, um, here's what's happening this week. It is probably the most profound transition in the history of Texas. Basically, a couple of things are going on. You have a revolution in Mexico as the Mexicans try to throw off Spanish rule, very similar to what the Americans tried to do against the British in beginning in 1776. And I'm going to talk about how that affects Texas, the events of the Mexican Revolution in Mexican Texas. But then what I'm going to talk about, and this is the important transition, 1821, Spanish Texas becomes Mexican Texas. The Spanish are kicked out of North America. And at that point, there are agreements signed that allow Anglo families to come into Texas uh, with their enslaved, mostly to cultivate cotton, but also in an attempt to populate Texas, maybe to help fight the Comanche, to bring the economy of Texas into the modern world by the growth of cotton, which the Spanish had never really gotten involved with. So, long story short, Texas becomes part of the global cotton economy. And cotton is the most valuable commodity on earth during this period. It's akin to oil in the 20th century up to today. It's a commodity that's in high demand. And if you could grow cotton and you could get cotton to markets, global markets, Atlantic markets, Europe, the US Northeast, you could make a fortune. And so this is what's going to happen with Texas beginning in the 1820s. Texas, which had been a ranching economy, underpopulated up until the 1820s, will now become part of the global cotton economy and will start gaining a significant population of Anglo-Americans, Afro-Americans who are in almost all cases 99.9% enslaved. And very quickly, as I talk about these new groups coming into Texas, Anglo Americans and African Americans, very quickly they outnumber the Tejanos that were already in Texas. So basically, Texas becomes part of the global cotton economy, which also means that Texas becomes part of the slave economy as well, because slavery was seen by white Americans as absolutely the essential foundation to the cultivation of cotton, because the enslaved were the labor force that cultivated cotton, grew and cultivated cotton. They also cleared the forest. Slaves were just basically the unpaid workers of whites who have come into Texas. So there's quite a dark underbelly to this and tragedy to the joining of Texas to the global cotton economy. And I'll talk a lot about the significance of slavery in Texas, beginning with this week, but especially in the upcoming weeks. So, like I said, we're reaching a turning point in the history of Texas. Texas is becoming American, which means more Anglos, Protestant, coded ethnically white. We're starting to see more African Americans in Texas, and very quickly they outnumber the Tejanos in Texas. I talk about this on podcast, but I'll mention it now. By 1836, the year of the Texas Revolution, there were about 36,000 folks in Texas, maybe a little bit more. Of those folks, 30,000 or so were Anglos from the United States. About 5,000 were enslaved from the United States, enslaved African Americans, and about 2,500 were Tejanos. I think that adds up to a little bit more than 36,000, probably 37 or so thousand. But here's the big point, and without getting lost in numbers, Tejanos become tremendously outnumbered. in Mexican during the period of Mexican Texas. And ultimately, as we all know, Mexico will lose Texas first to Anglos and then to the United States. So we can see that coming. Uh, Before I stop, as always, take a look at the maps. I think it's really worth your time. I also have an orientation to the first four chapters of the uh, Forget the Alamo, which you'll be tested on next week on midterm one. So I give you an orientation on that book as well. So listen to that orientation so you have a sense of what it is I'm looking for, the details I'm looking for. That's what I do these orientations for. What else is there? There's a map on the introduction of slavery into the a documentary rather on the introduction of slavery into the Austin colony. And last but not least, there is an interview with Brian Burrow on Fresh Air, the really excellent NPR interview show with Terry Gross, where um, he talks about the Alamo book that he co-wrote. Uh, and he's part of a very robust and very, very controversial discussion about the history of the Alamo, how to remember the Alamo, whether or not slavery was key to the Texas Revolution or it was not as significant to the Texas Revolution. There's a very, very fierce discussion in 2023 about these questions. And Burrow certainly comes down very hard on one side of the question. Now, he's not the only person. There are other voices out there, but I just find his discussion very, very interesting in the discussion of the his two co-authors. I'm not co-signing their check in terms of interpretation, but I do want to expose you to the at least one part of the argument that's being made about the significance of slavery in the Texas Revolution, and ideally, you can make up your own mind. But we'll be talking about this very, very hot issue over the next couple of weeks.